Welcome and thank you for joining us today on Esoteric Radio. Today is Sunday, February 27th, 2011. I'm your co-host, Satori Moon. On today's show, we will be continuing along with a series that Seven previously established to reveal all that we need to know for our growth and our universal connection. The focus of this show will be on our origins, our languages, and even our very essence as souls. The title of today's show is Man's History and Woman's Mystery. Here comes another great one. Before I pass on to Seven, today they will be not taking any calls. We'll be only taking questions on the chat box. You can post questions on Blog Talk Radio's chat box, and of course the Resistance chat box if you are the Resistance website. And for those who are new to the Resistance, you'll get more information by checking out the Resistance website at www.resistance2010.com. There you will find a free copy and be able to download Seven's book, The Code to the Matrix. Recently, it's been made available on video, and you can access it through the Resistance site, or I'll go onto YouTube and search The Code to the Matrix. I want to send a wholeness to Resistance members, Mr. Spirit Matter and MJ, and everyone who put together their collaboration and efforts for providing us this knowledge on this different format. As always, we are here for each other. Without further ado, here's Seven to get us into today's show, Man's History and Woman's Mystery. What's our story, Seven?
Wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone, Resistance family and guests. Today is just a phenomenal day. I just feel exuberant in being here with everyone. And today I'm actually going to make a really great attempt to open up all of my chakras to everyone, so that we understand how we're all connected and we can send out the real signal of universalism, the real signal of wholeness by understanding exactly what it means. And the interesting part about my quest, which has become now our quest, is we're able to look into so many things, and in looking into things, we know what we want. So when we say we want universalism, we want wholeness, that's when it begins to come about. And because we said that at a certain period of time in the past, it's now coming in full circle and actually allowing us to actually enjoy that. And so that's something that we want to share with everyone, because that is what those words mean. The first thing that I really want to talk about, because if everyone remembers, the last show was more or less an introduction to what this series is about. And through that introduction, I had to go into even deeper study just to get all of the facts, just to get all of the names and the things straight so that I was able to present what I knew properly. And even in that, because there's so much information that's here now on the internet especially, and the way that information is being shared, even with people meditating and tapping into other planes where other people are meditating, people have to realize also that when you go into meditation, you also go into another field of other meditators, and you get a chance to share the energy in which they wish to share. And I wanted to let everyone know, for everyone that says, I want to know my history, and I want to know my mystery, and I want to know where I'm from. You're from light and sound. The beginning, it can't even be accounted for, because you have to say, when was the first sound ever made? And when you can look into that, you can see, okay, automatically that's going to go way beyond anything material, anything hasn't been developed yet. So that's where we're all from. And then after that, just like as you see with a fractal, it begins to spread itself. It begins to bloom like a tree. And it begins to have different fruit. And if you notice, I think the old term is grafting, where you can actually get a citrus tree to grow oranges, lemons, and limes, things that were citrus all on the same branch. And what we've watched in our history, in our mysteries, is we've watched that tree span out so far that sometimes the fruit on one side of the tree, let's say the north side, can't see the fruit on the south side of the tree anymore, because it's gotten so vast. The connection is stretched very thin. And so what it takes one from one side of the tree to touch hands with another one from the other side of the tree, and then to make a bridge. And how this is being done is this is being done with all of the multiple energies that we've collected over time. Because we haven't just collected what we've collected in colonization, but we've also collected what we've collected in animal essence. And people have to understand that at one point the animal played a very close relationship with man and woman. Just like they see the canine is they say man's best friend, because the canine was often used to hunt and to scare away things that man himself could not deal with or subdue. So then man in honor erected things and said, that's that embodiment of that energy, that sight, that sound that I don't have, but this has, and we will erect it as a god. And so this is a part of a major growth of a whole civilization, a whole uncivilization, just a whole, meaning that everything, you get civilized, uncivilized, light and dark, green, blue, red, you get it all. And then you get to decide what you want to do with it, how limited or how unlimited you want to become. And they started to signify this as rings. That each language, because in a real language, the last letter connects the first letter, and it's called the cable or the cobble. And that cobble or total circulation of a particular field of energy or words becomes a ring. And when the ring is broken, meaning when the language does not become intelligible because there's missing pieces and people are saying the wrong things, then the whole thing breaks apart and you get a straight line where one end is not conscious of the other end anymore. It's not connected. So what we have here is that this is a prime example of what I mean by the changing of the words and what they mean and how to correct them. This word will start with the simply E-T, pronounced et. Now, it's interesting because this word originally means family, and as I've learned from Yoon recently, it means the reason for existence. And if you pull it in French, and if you pull it apart just through the etymology, it would also say a repeating of family. That's all it's saying. Re is just a repeat. So what we see is that if this word means family, but we actually think it means foreign alien, you can see how if things are going to start getting disconnected like they have. Because the word we now use for ET is some alien from outer space that we're very unfamiliar with and we don't know. And maybe that's true from one sense because we've been disconnected. But it's not true from the sense of that this meaning of this word is not something that needs to be reestablished. And so, for all those that are on the line, many are more than active at the Resistance, and so they've been through all the preliminary posts to this conversation. So we'll just begin from there for those who've done their study. You'll notice I started to publish a lot of information within the last 3 days in regards to the real Atlanteans and Atlantis and their real origins. And this has been not only so that people who identify with that can see their struggle, but they can also see how they pursued through their struggle and what led them to believe and think the way they do. But as many know that the Atlanteans were melanin recessive. This means that they were white. We'll just use these terms, melanin recessive and melanin dominant. Melanin, which means black and white. And the interesting part is what you find is that black people can identify with the struggle because we are struggling at times and we have struggled at times. And I have the benefit of being both, as they call it, the gift and the curse. So you can make the bridge. Because what happens is that all I've really watched now through my deepest studies is how the fractal collects and how prejudices or prejudgments are because don't have all the story. And the disconnection came from money. But the root of it is killing. And so we're going to start talking about how we can expand this whole world and how we're going to expand this whole world and how we're going to become galactic, and it's really going to happen here. Because even though to speak of such things, one would easily cower away from such ideas of bridging worlds. And even me, at times, I've been thrusted along into this, and sometimes I say, whoa, are we really going to be doing this? But there's so many in this circle now, there's so many answering back, yes. And these are the people in meditation, these are the people in the whole mind of the resistance and even beyond. And as that continues to collect, it's really more of you have a really beautiful design. And so what we'll talk about here first is we'll talk about the time capsules. We'll talk about Earth as a being itself knows the time and cycles and changes in which it needs to make a whole child, a whole being. Because what they noticed in the ancient times is that there needed to be a deeper science to make sure that when you birthed the child became whole, came out whole rather than partial to one side or another. Because this meant the child would not come out activated with abilities. And for the record, when you use predominantly one hand, that is a sign of unbalance. And generally, if you go into any really deep mystery school, they sit you down and they make you draw a perfect circle with two hands to see where your balance is. And this is how there's that handwriting thing where people can tell by your handwriting what you are and how you are and your temper and everything. It's about that balance. And when the balance is actually restored, it's not just all an idea and a mental dream and a namaste and a new age. It's about your functioning changes. You can do things. And generally, when you can do things, meaning you have abilities, the first thing you already know at that point is to not really show people those abilities. Because this is just as harmful as and I want to explain something really, really, really deep here. Many people are wondering, why am I alone? Why do I have people around me that are like me? That's going to happen here in a moment. But the fact is that when you're in training, it's very damaging for the student to be around other students with abilities for several reasons. One, the emotional tensions caused in the flux of the auric field when one is changing, colliding with another one could cause that one or two individuals to use their abilities against each other. And in fact, there's an opposing energy, as there's always an opponent, that actually will attempt to cause that to happen. But even more so, when one has a lot of abilities, the other one begins to feel like, if the training hasn't been already done properly in their mind, mental training, that, wow, I'll never be like that, or they'll begin to idolize the person. So this is why the college became invisible. Working on you in your own space, and then allowing you to occultate with the individuals that it brings across your sphere until you're finally ready to go into what you're here for. So, now I'll tell you why we're here. The whole planet was the garden, and we were the keepers. I remember one time I got into a really bad funk, and then somebody said, "What's wrong, Seven? You don't want to be a steward of the planet anymore?" Because we're all supposed to be working our plants and seeds. See, our whole existence was our plants and our seeds and our trees and our flora and our fauna, because we connected it into it in a way that made us immortal. And now we're destroying that, so we're going to be destroying our immortality, but it'll stop. Because when people know what they're doing, they'll stop it. Notice how paper became what they wanted to keep passing. They wanted to cut the tree and make the paper and make the root, cut the root. Because they knew that the essence of a big part of what we are existed within the trees. And that's why when you put the right trees together, you know everything. And men kept trying to keep this knowledge safe while other men were trying to bury it and use it because it's passive. See, nature is elemental. So men, and women, because of their star origin, are capable of controlling things with their power. They have atoms within them. They can explode and implode. And so things that are not familiar with that are very afraid of that. So we started to misuse that power. And in misusing the power locked itself out through confusion, buried itself. And now we have to uncover it because we need it. There's something here that has to stop, and there's something that must begin. So, what I wanted to really do is I wanted to take this personal time to thank everyone. Just for being present. And going through this period, it's been a year, about 2 years, and we're speeding into 2012. And there's been some people that have been there all along the way. And then we've watched other ships merge in because each person's a ship. And then we watched the collection of information as much as we could, non-biased. And we just shielded ourselves from what we knew was harmful for us. We pulled apart the artifacts and we saw what was artifiction. We went into etymology, which is the real way of studying anything. It's the tree, it's the, as they call it, the Syrah. And they also call it the Tower of Babel. Man and woman all spoke one language. Solomon spoke to the animals. This language in itself was what had to be disrupted for two reasons. One, because of the continuous misuse of it. But who had to do that? And that's what people are missing at times when they play goody two-shoot. Is they are polarized to the good, so they don't understand the role of evil at times. And they don't understand evil at all, so it remains veiled. E-V-I-L, V-I-E-L, V-I-L, L-I-V-E. The real way to live is to know what balance is. The priests of Levi, as they call themselves, L-E-V-I, were in charge of understanding the knowledge behind the world serpent, as they call it, meaning the serpentine energy that courses throughout the planet that can be tapped into, that is also in the center of you, that relies dormant, and in bringing up and cycling in a circle, you actually turn on your chakra. And so any teaching that didn't accompany this was false teaching or premature. And that includes the Bible. So what happens is, if you look now, they show now on Google Earth that there's hundreds of tribes that still have never seen Western people. So how far in the past has it really been? I'm starting noticing in history it doesn't take time machines anymore to get when man was primitive because of the last cataclysm and things getting knocked offline. Now, the interesting part about fruit is this. If I lay out a piece of fruit for a moment, and I give it a period of time, eventually things will be around that fruit. Things will be growing. Things will be living there. So this is just how the earth is even with men and women. If there's been a cataclysm, there's no one here anymore, there's still going to be men and women springing up from somewhere. And based on the levels of knowledge that have been preserved, is going to determine what happens next. And this has been our story over and over and over and over again. And to the point where the previous races, the ones that were advanced, but that still didn't get to everyone in the world with their teaching about the chakra center and how to escape the monster, as they kept calling the planet, because of its upheavals and its way of renting asunder itself. However, yes, we've done a lot of bashing all the time about the stabilization of this planet from a governmental level. But from a certain scientific level in regards to finding out where the wobble was and how to deflect certain things from colliding with Earth, there was a major advancement in that area, meaning that when you look at the timelines closely, you'll see that even in the span that our forefathers have been alive and been able to carry history, there were major cataclysms in history that were even worse, that would throw the whole planet off a line. And somehow man and woman melding with nature and utilizing earth energies to balance energies actually let the planet be balanced. And I've actually met people that do that. They know when there's going to be an earthquake, and they begin to send energy into the earth to calm the earth, to subside the earthquake. And when you understand that symbiotic level of working with things, then you can understand exactly what we have to stop. What the society has now concocted with these evil people called themselves Jesuits, and these people that call themselves the papacy have erased history and put up Borg, and are wanting to make that which wants everything concrete, basically. It wants the concrete, which was the place of the Gnostic secret teachings of ages, etc. Now, everything that came in just 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, every religion got a makeover. Buddhism got a makeover with the Dogen sects. Islam got a makeover. Christianity got a makeover. Gnosticism, no more Sufism, no more none of this. So then they say, you should be like God. In the Quran, in the Bible, it says you should struggle to be like God. But God is killing everything in the Old Testament and in the Surah. This is the veil when you can't see that. And you have some other reason. Well, that's because you're veiled. Because killing is what starts the cycle of destruction of the trees and the knowledge and the sense of who we all are. And we get disconnected. So here's what was discovered. Hitler discovered the doppelganger theory. Rediscovered the doppelganger theory. It's known that when one person is born on one side of the world, the exact opposite of the person is born, but not in the way you see opposites. It's when there's a black one born, there's a white one born, but they have the same name, they have the same birthday, they have the same zodiac, they have the same everything. And then they become what they're to become on their side, keeping the whole thing balanced, as they show you those small islands within the yin and yang. But teachers that have come to the world did the same thing. When you had one teacher, you had two, because everyone are those. If you were a teacher, you were balanced, so you had already another you. Which they call the secret of the golden lotus, the homunculus, which is the actual being. Now, woman shows us that she can do it externally. She can bring forth a living being. Man has the exact same ability that lives within, which is through his chi and the circulation of his chi. So even the so-called solar cult is not in support of man. It's in support of greed. It's in support of a dark energy that I will lay away. And that I becomes the collection of everyone back together again. Because these symbols are what we really need to have complete understanding on in order to level up. So, the polarities, I want to talk about this. Polarities, the rise and the fall of good kings and bad kings. Now, everyone's got someone in the family that just doesn't get it. And if you look at the word king and you remove the G, then you get kin, because that was what the ruler was always supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a very close, basically a relative of everyone. And that's why you have Obama that has all these lineages inside of him, because he's actually able to represent all of these parties as long as they sign those dockets and bills and things like that. He's a legal representative, basically. And so it also takes that now in the, what do you call it, the Rainbow College or Rainbow University, that you have beings from everywhere signing up to get their species to the next level, because it's kind of we're awake now. Everyone understands, okay, there's an impending disaster that always takes place on Earth, because that's just how she rolls. She's got to get everything churned in, churned out, tesseracted to the next dimension. You say, well, the canopy falls, as they say. It's because we're standing on a globe upside down. Our perspective is kind of screwed up. When your third eye is not open, you don't have a projection of your mind, so you see it externally. And so you see it as stars in the sky. Like I said, the dark room meditation, 2 weeks in the dark room. After a week and a few days, boom, the lights turn on. All of a sudden your body has this other lighting system, which we can see in the fishes that live at the bottom of the ocean, where they just, hey, I got to create my own light. If there's not one. So that's where we are in this whole evolutionary process, as they love to call it. We are mated with crystals, mated with humans. What happens when you put people on a planet with animals, crystals, on a bubble, actually? Put them in a bubble, they can't get off the ground, and you put them with all this stuff. What happens? Let's see what happens. And so what we actually are witnessing right now is we're witnessing what we've created, but it's so separated, meaning that there are some people working on some brilliant things, and if they just had a little key integer, they would be able to blow up with it. Meaning that you got people like the girl that's working on the harmonic sound and the resonance of cymatics right at the cusp of creating the universal language. And all it takes is someone that knows about the creation of the universal language and its purpose to go and just talk to her. And now we finally got to the level where we have enough people, where we have enough that are dedicated, because out of 3,000 people that we have on the resistance, the percentage of the people that are actually involved, I would say, needs to increase. But that will only happen the more that people see this is the truth. I don't have time to waste my time. I walked away from money for this. So it's led to me actually discovering something that I more than want to share with everyone here. I just need the ability to keep doing that. But either way, I will compress all of the knowledge into the space in which I think that I have, and then if people want to encrypt it, it'll be on a heavily encrypted level, and people can pull it apart from there, like we were talking about. Me and you today, we were talking about how wise men can say one thing, one sentence, and have you pondering it for a long time, because you can keep pulling it apart and pulling it apart and pulling it apart. But unfortunately, I don't believe there's time for that kind of thing. I think that's when you're underneath the pear tree or the peach tree and you're in the blossom and your garden is good. That's when it's time for the prophecies and everyone to scratch their kitchen and drink from the fountain. Right now, we're engaged. And this engagement, to me, is coming as a test to the children. Because in certain instances where I had the portal open, I heard laughing and I felt the energy of fathers and mothers on the other side. And I wasn't having a good time either. Meaning when that happened, I was already so amazed at what was occurring. I was blown, but I was like, why is this funny to them? But now I understand and overstand and understand why. It's because we were put on this for this moment. Everything was continuing to die and come back. It was dying, blinking like a ghost, and then coming back. So it can be all present for this particular moment in which we make that stand, that burst of whole new energy, a starburst, as they're supposed to call it. And what this energy does is it actually brings a higher realization to everything that exists. And this is what they're talking about when you look into astronomy, when it says when this nucleus of stars actually implode at a certain point and then explode, or supernova, it makes a light that is, it says, millions of times more stronger than our sun. And the sun's got no problem with that. As long as we're not shooting rockets and things at it. So what happens is, and the moon's got no problem with that, as long as we're not shooting rockets and things at it. But that was the old days. Meaning that was when those elements were on the autopilot of the original creation of this particular galaxy. When we started tampering with things, like when they went to the moon and set up a base, when they developed HAARP systems and started tuning into more frequencies, and like they say, even now with these cameras, they are now actually finding endangered species that have species that have never been seen before. It's a mobilization that's happening now. Meaning that the brink of intelligence in which we're gaining from this computer, because they're working with Crays and all of those systems, it's doing the same for them. Meaning that this connection of knowledge that is going with these individuals that want to be greedy with the knowledge. They're holding the knowledge. They know how to activate the body with the pill. There's a red pill. There is. So it's time to take Smeagol's hands off the controllers. And the reason why we're going to do that is because we have no choice. In the garden, you can often fall asleep. There's a lot of experiences because you're basically playing in God's world, for better lack of words, meaning that you're playing in something that you are learning in, so there's a huge amount of abilities and signs and wonders and curiosities and elements and all of that here. And there's much more to explore. However, your exploring is similar to what happened to me when I was told to teach. He said, you need to teach. And I said, how can I teach? I don't even know. And it said, you know more than most. Just start from there. So that's what you need to take what you've already discovered, human, and use that. Because now's the time for you to use it. It's not any other time. These Mayans even if the Mayan prophecy wasn't true, there's enough people believing in it to make 2012 going to be something going on. Now, it's true. Venus is tracing out a perfect Fibonacci sequence in the sky. So what that really means is that the gate of the pi and the golden means and these ratios, they all mean something. It's almost like, hello, Western world, there's knowledge, and even your own predecessors knew about it, but they weren't telling you, but it actually turns on not only you, but the other side of things. Because while we're here twiddling our thumbs and times and trying to figure things out, That world is already going on, baby. Meaning that it doesn't start when you get in. It's already been going on, and you're on timeout. And to get off timeout, you have to get to this level of knowledge. You have to collect your rings. This is in the language. Know your etymology. Know what you're saying. Know your history. Erase your prejudices because they block your mind. Like I say, disbelievers block their own way. Because whether you don't want to get into it or not, fine. Doesn't matter. It's still moving. And you would just as soon as get pushed off like Toy Story 3 into the spiral if you don't paddle away from it. Now notice, on a vortex, anyone on the outside of a vortex spins very wide. So by the time that they figure out a way to close the vortex, you should be all right if you're on the outside. But if you're in the center, you're going to go down the drain. And always down the drain of the vortex, it means a loop. It just means you won't remember most of where you were before, because vortexes are very volatile unless you have proper training. So this is like the difference between learning how to ride a car on the earth, like a Bugatti Veyron, something of that nature. And you really be able to drive that thing too. So maneuvering a space vehicle that has infinite possibilities to where it can go and travel. Now, there are other existences. There's ETs. There's a whole galactic council, federations, yes. But there's not if you're not there. Meaning that the wishful thinking and all of that, let's put it away and let's really get there. So what really happens here now is that we go into expounding very deeply on this knowledge of how to really activate. And people need to understand that I'm on the quest. There's quests that are finishing and more that are beginning. I'm not stopping. I'm already moving too fast to slow down. So in that, I see that knowledge has a continuous stream of things it wants you to know. Knowledge has this stream of information that it's like, hey, come talk to me. Hey, I got this for you. Hey, I'm dropping this off this morning. Hey, are you awake? I've been in the early morning, and many people have experienced this, and you have the most brilliant ideas, and it's like something is talking to you and giving them to you, and you're asleep still. Now we want to know how to keep the body from even sleeping. And so this is why I feel personally that I was trained in all of these cycles of Gnosticism and all these cycles of Islam and Wahhabism and Christianity and Taoism and and Neigong and Dogen and then, you know, and this has all been through the pursuit, and we've been able to get through it very fast with a little of droid's assistance, meaning that this computer thinks. Because here's what I recently just looked at, because I noticed that these prejudices and blocks in our mind are because of our ignorance. Like I said, when you look at the tribes, and I've been to, there's a few of them around here in Costa Rica. There's pre-Columbia also. And then if you go into other parts of the Yucatan, Arizona, the Amazon and the peninsula, you'll find these tribes. We're going to go there. And we're going to show the culture. And you'll see pros and cons to it. And this is why I believe that we had to graduate to another level, that we were pulled out of the forest. They say out of the wilderness. And then now we're out of the forest, out of the wilderness, out of the jungle. Because there was still more potential. And to what put us originally here, the sound, the light, knew there was more potential. And if one says, oh, well, no, we were the most intelligent then. Oh, my goodness. Come on. What kind of thinking is this? You can always be more and 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 more. Just like you can always be less and less and less and less and less and less. So Now we've got to a point where we have to learn lessons now. And boy, have I learned lessons, and I'm so glad to be learning lessons, because being lost out in the wilderness and your light is kind of starting to go dim and you don't have any more power for it, that's not fun. So I'm going to take a break here for a moment to make sure I disconnect these lines in the house, and then we're going to get into the show a little bit deeper. We're going to see what's in the chat box, and I'm going to get something to drink, and then we're going to enjoy this new part of what's happening, because we're in the know.
Okay, we'll take a moment for a break, so please stay present. Wholeness. Welcome back. Here's 7 to continue.
Okay, actually, I thought you were gonna say some more things. I mean, I told everyone that the thing is, today's show is you're now seeing all the chakras open. And what I've been doing is I can't lie, I've been holding back, meaning that I've been keeping a lot of who I am and what I came to do scheduled properly. And I've even scheduled it properly within my own mind, meaning that I know that sometimes you want to do something, but you know you can't do it right now. It's chess. It's not checkers. It's an I Ching. It's 64 hexagram. It's a crazy-looking Rubik's Cube. You have to be timed perfectly. And so that means that it's just like, again, if you have an ability and you never show anyone that ability even though you want to, but you know it's not time. So here's what we'll get into about the show today, because the show, it had several topics, which was funny because the titles actually kept changing. But the official title was Atlantis, All the Land Ice. Because what I had discovered in my burrowing, because they look at me, I guess, like a boar. And I'm just tunneling through all the knowledge, and I'm ravaging through it, and I'm a little wild like a bull in a china house, but I'm looking for something. And I got into certain things, and because of my ability to understand the etymology, I knew what I was looking at. And I got the confirmation that was correct, that Atlantis has to do with an ice kingdom, which these group of people that were bringing the Atlantean knowledge, that's where they reside. That's where they resided, because they were actually on what we would know as a large iceberg, more or less separated from everything else. And in that time, they began to cultivate, and that's what Hitler was looking for when he went to the pole, that he was trying to find these people to see if they were still alive, the original Atlanteans, because he knew it had nothing to do with this new understanding of what Atlantis is. It had to do with old rune stones and people who had tapped the ley lines and had done deep things with the earth, and somehow no one could find them. And the reason why was when they died, they cremated themselves. And then they spread their ashes under an ash tree. And they said that this allowed them to pass through into the next existence whole, because the ash tree the tree would bring it up into its roots, and then when it blossomed, it would sprout out. Now, this knowledge is actually knowledge that's found in many places all around the world where you get the more advanced thinking people. It's a little bit different than the hunter-gatherer. It's more of like the civilization that the people can mentally move things with stone. And move things with stones. Yeah, they can mentally move things with stones, yes. But they're tapped into a level of knowledge that was given to them, they say, by the original star beings, etc. But there were races that didn't have that knowledge. And at times, visually, they looked the same. But because everyone was still going through the natural evolution process of the planet, but spiritually, they were completely different. And it was all about when you birth the child whole. And what this also leads to is also how to become whole, because you can birth yourself multiple times. And this is why that the baptisms became so important, because everyone knew that our origin was the water. That's why this man's sperm is called semen. And everything related to the sea is the S, which is the curve, really. It's just the breast, basically. And then this is the shore, this is ships, this is sails. Everything there starts with the S. And that's why this particular race of people that were more gravitated towards the sea, they love to surf. So this is the same thing as what I was discovering as the fireman, meaning the one who his whole land is in the sun. It's like a jungle or a desert, versus the Iceman, who his whole area is covered in ice and it's white. And so when you're seeing that all day, like just like our sky is blue, when you're seeing white all day, then the color you're orientated to, meaning when you say take in the white light, who's been seeing the white light? So when someone says take in the green light, who's been seeing the green light? So when you take into these multiple colors, you understand that you're taking in different environments. And so you need to keep the balance of those environments, or you either become too cold or too hot. So what happens is that I was discovering that this original race of Atlanteans were called the Aser, which is A-S-E-R, which, of course, in the code just means the serpent. But the interesting part is that this relationship with the serpent was simply about the serpentine energies and the electrical energy, et cetera, as we've discovered now. And now more to do with our fractal snake friend that people want to bow down in front of idols to, that even if they get to a certain level of knowledge, they wouldn't mind being bowed down to. Meaning that the good king, bad king. Like a bad king is going to allow you to bow down to him. A good king is going to tell you to stand on your feet. Because that's the kind of people you want to rule over if you're in that type of arena, meaning you've been given the shepherdship. Now remember, people don't want to be sheeple, but man, they sure act like sheeple, meaning that you see the stores, man, that's the biggest sign of sheeple, because you're not even in an area where the food can even grow. Most people are not even in an area where the food can even grow, so they got to get it at the store. So before ever complaining about being sheeple, then those type of things would need to be fixed, or else you're kind of destroying your foundation before you even have a new one. And like I said, this is what I discovered about when you reveal what's going on in the dollar and what's going on with America's economy and what's going on with their satanic involvements and their Molochian, Astrolochian, Saturnalian, whatever they're doing. When you reveal that and people start having faith in that, then it actually begins to tear that down. That's how it works. See what happens? We need to tear it down when people are not in it that don't deserve to be in it, though. That's how you do it. Chess, not checkers. So it's very interesting now that we're getting now people that are more quantum and thinking about what to do about this situation right before 13 o'clock. The return of Cube, or Q. What this was about is that I woke up the other morning and I woke up at like 4 o'clock with some of the indigenous guys partying on the astral plane. Costa Rica, which is Guatemala, which is Mayan country. So I'm on the astral and they're showing me just this R symbol Q in English, the capital Q. And it shows it as a globe and then this little wormy thing entering into the globe, which is actually the same thing that we see when we, come into existence ourselves with the woman's egg and the man's semen. And so I'm like, man, guys, I'm asleep here. What are you trying to show me? But serious, what was happening is that I was literally being shown that there's going to be an entry into our planet by whatever that squiggly line is in the circle. The planet is going to attempt to become pregnant, I guess. And I believe that this is not something that we will be able to prevent. This is just something that while you're riding the wave, if you understand what you're doing, you'll be able to guide yourself into the next galactic existence properly, memory intact, whole. Because you got to keep it moving. It's more like, really, these beings are so intelligent. If you can understand the Earth knows everything that's here, that's why I can live on it. And so its knowledge is so vast, how could you ever limit it to what you think? And that's what I find most of the time is people always want to limit other people's knowledge based on how they think. It's an extreme disadvantage. People have to understand if, first of all, if a person's intelligent and carrying high levels of spiritual knowledge just in their brain alone, never really underestimate those individuals because the information is there. And if you really want to know the truth of every single thing that happened here in this planet, someone could explain it to you even in our language if they knew it. So that means that it's actually in your mind already. It's just in the wrong order. And once you put all your words in the right order, then you know everything that's happening. This seems to come time for the people that are ready to graduate, basically, and go into the next existence and get more into the bigger part of things, as they love to say. This happens to those people right around the time where the planet is kind of curtain closed time, like time for behind the scenes cleaning up. There always has to be these type of things taking place to motivate the species on the planet to tap into what is there. Because listen, if the chakras are there, and I can tell you they're capable of doing these wild things, and I've been on some of these wild rides, and they keep getting stronger and stronger as I activate more and more, then those that don't know about this stuff, it's obvious that they either need to get in the know about it or the next phase already consists of that, meaning that this is the next phase to things. And so those who are not tapping into that, obviously there's some type of reincarnation, reentry process that needs to take place for them. Because I was in the shower in this deep, deep meditation, and I felt this presence, and they actually said, do you think we would mismanage you? This is that ancestral energy coming in. Do you think that we would just leave you there in all that's been put into you and all the conscious dreaming and all of this stuff that you've been into or you're about to be into because you're now hearing about it, and that's why we want you to hear about it so that we can take you to this whole another level because there is one? So that's where we're at. And so going into this Atlantis thing, what I discovered that this knowledge, obviously, on this planet, when taught, let's say the knowledge of the chakras, it was taught by the same teachers, but on different sides of the globe. And those teachers became the planet. Like the planet was the teacher. And that's why people became so fascinated with Ma and those words and what those words really mean. Because the planet became the first instructor. And when we learned completely what was from the planet, we were more than ready to graduate because we also knew that everything here on the planet had its own star origin too and something to share, and you were going to need a piece of that along your hero's journey, as they love to call it, on your life forever quest, your final fantasy. You were going to need all of these things. You were going to need to collect the bergamot. You were going to need to collect the star and the stone from this place, and you were going to need to collect certain things in your auric essence. You didn't even have to take it with you physically. That's what this death cycle is. You're going to take it with you. Come on. These people have so much capital. Mind you, the dollar is about to crash because there's so much out there. So that means there's so many people that are still holding on to these huge numbers in the bank that they can just take off a couple of those digits and say, let's put it in a universal language. Or let's put it in actually curing this. Let's do that. And it would actually it would work. But it would not work without the avatars. That was the problem. What happened is that within every single pyramid, basically, you have a point. And now the point is, the people are like, oh, I'm the point. Okay, run up in the front then. Because now you got to penetrate every single thing that we're about to run into and open up a wedge so that everyone else can come through. And this type of defense, offense strategy has won playoffs. And that's what it is. This is the grand finale. And there are people that are going to step up in the front, and then the other people will say, well, shoot, I'll just go behind that one. Because they're all very, like I said, oh, ye of little faith. They're always like, I don't want to put my name on it. I don't want to be the one saying it, but it needs to be said. Got people running around calling themselves archons. You have such an abuse on society, and then all these powerful engines, these powerful beings just sitting on idle. That's what I watched. I was driving down the street, because I don't know if I've told this story on the air, but I was driving down the street and I was thinking about the engine in a car and how powerful it was if you in a really, really powerful car or arc. And he said, yeah, Seven, but you still would have to step on the gas. You could be this powerhouse, but if you don't step on the gas, no one sees that. No one feels that. And so that's what we're asking from universalism, neo-universalism. That's what we're asking from the ET family, which is you. What we're asking is that when you begin to put this into your mind, when you begin to study and see, and what I'm doing now is I'm just getting all of the most important things and putting it together so it doesn't take you long. You don't have to spend much time on it. And what that allows me to do for you is it allows me to fast forward you, quicken you. And then that's when we're really into what we need to be into. It's like this is the preliminary phase. Things are setting themselves up. Everyone already knows how crazy I am, and they already know how much I know, and they know that I just as soon as dive in a volcano before I stop. Meaning that this is not going to stop for me before they make it stop. And it appears to be a problem with making it stop because there's too many connections with family and bloodlines and names and numbers and all the other stuff that they are so superstitious about. So we have this opportunity, and it's 2012 almost, and we need to spread the information. We need to get people in the know so that we can go ahead and activate. Once enough people activate, then they're set up as waypoints across the quadrant of the Earth that we call Earth, I guess now, about the planet we call Earth. And then it connects another kind of grid, which is an organic grid, not this 60 hertz Mr. Saturn electronic L energy. And then we take this thing into a higher level of consciousness, and then you'll see it when you get there, because those type of things cannot be explained of what is exactly there, but it's the big reason for everything, as they call it. I guess it's easier to explain it into the deeper text. They love to talk about the perfection when realms where it's perfect. Where I've now discovered and even seen, and I actually post languages that are cyclopean languages, which means that through one eye you see the language as it is. You don't see one half of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this time to take some questions. And I've definitely said enough for people to think about what's happening. I've exerted a lot of essence to get it very clear on where we're at, because clarity is everything. It means everything to me. And so we're just going to take this time for people to ask questions about what was posted earlier, any questions they want to ask me, etc. And so I'm going to let Satori go ahead and give me those questions.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Seven. Amazing information that you put out. I actually wanted to add that earlier you're talking about when people, pass away and they burn their bodies, they become ashes, and they put them through the ash tree. The movie The Fountain came to mind. I don't know if people have seen that movie, where a man is in a bubble in space, and he's trying to take his loved one, and she's a tree now, and he's trying to become enlightened and with her, along with her. Can you comment on that movie or that expression? I guess that film.
Definitely. I've actually seen that film quite a few times. I saw it actually in New York when it first came out. It was in a foreign theater, and the movie is, of course, very steered towards the Catholic standpoint because they love to get into that. Actually, there's a couple movies with trees that one can really read deep into and get the higher meaning of, and that's not only The Fountain but also the last, the Avatar, the actual movie, The Avatar, which I'm very, very distasteful movie to me, especially from the director's standpoint and his prejudices. But the fact is that what he's showing is that there is this connection that we have with trees and with knowledge and with roots, and that our family lineages and branches and fruits and all of that relate to us in such a very deep way. And that's why even in the Bible it shows like a connotation where man spills his semen on the soil and something sprouts forth, but the man is killed for doing that. And it's really this part about potency, which is the beginning of creation. It appears to be definitely a breeding process going on. And when people think about that word now, they're like, oh my goodness, I was being breeded? Oh my goodness, I'm an animal? But they don't, that's the limited understanding. When the original beings came forth, what they wanted to do is they wanted to create more of themselves, and even perfect versions, more perfected versions. But in that, there's always a drawback. It's almost like anything with you create one thing, you also create something else, even within the disbelief of it. If you notice in the Bible, it's obviously that the Jehovah's gods were at one point very so upset with what was going on with the people that they created, that they said that they made even the reflection, I wish I never had done that. And even to make a reflection like that as a god causes a whole ripple of dark energy. And that's why I was saying before, we have to stop accepting many of these religions as our teachings and that as our father, because it becomes the difference between the good and the bad king, and et cetera, and getting into the bad role models that are being taught or into a child's mind, as that's the highest we can become. And that's why I always say that generally when we visit planets, we look at the name that the species is using for who they call God, and that gives us an idea of what they think is supreme. And so what happens is that that's like, it's a real quick tester. And that's why I believe also we have things like those glyphs that we can see from the petroglyphs that can be seen from the sky, where it's literally like those of higher consciousness only need a very quick level of data to determine what's going on. So it's almost like, okay, the bird is spilling over into the lion tribe. And they can see that by the bird landmass just moving into the lion landmass, and they can already calculate, okay, this is what's going to happen next on the level of evolution, or whatever we need to find a new word. But the fact also is that we're looking at in many times in history where land masses were separated by the sea, and then over time and through cataclysm there became a strait. And it was one of the main things that was taught to me when I first came into this higher level of knowledge was the Isthmus of Panama, which is basically a landmass that's been formed through the explosion of volcanoes under the earth, that are underneath the ocean for so long that it created a strait that the animals actually migrate across that have never been into the north. So, and it's so interesting in this area, and I've never been there because there's no freeways, there's no anything to it. They don't let anyone really get into it like that. And it's almost even a hindrance because they could easily build a freeway across it and it will connect two countries that really kind of need to be connected from a commerce level. But they've made sure that they allow only migration of animals through these areas. And so this is where we talk about the bear and the lion that are in different areas, and one starts to migrate into the other's area, and then there's literally a fighting with the animals for territory. And then this being somehow sending a ripple on a fractal level for the people who have that as their totem to start having conflicts with one another. And then those who understand this knowledge, understand how man and woman, the gift and the curse, as they love to say, we were melded with the planet to where if the planet dies, a big part of us, a half of us probably dies, and then the other half can't seem to live without it because it's this whole memory. And these people need to think about this because it's very deep knowledge passing across. If something happens to the planet, all the memory's gone. And every tree and everything that's destroyed and can't be replaced or transmuted properly, there's a segment of knowledge being lost. And so that's why there's always been a race, for better lack of words, to destroy things by this latest regime, which is coming to an end.
And I have a question about that, Seven. You were saying earlier about this planet, knows how to create whole people and how to create whole children. And then now we have these, these regimes now that are, fractalizing everything, changing the languages, introducing religions. my question is, what's in it for them? Why are they separating us? Why are they, keeping us all in polar states?
This is the bad child. This is the child that killed the animal, basically. There's always, like I said, in the garden, and when you're tending your garden, there's sometimes a crop that's lost because something attacks it, or it doesn't grow properly, or it catches a plague. What happened was there was a certain level of knowledge that was released to mankind at a certain point, and it ravaged his soul because it wasn't perfect. And when those men got infested with that knowledge, it changed them like Spider-Man's venom, like how he gets the venom on his finger and then all of a sudden it goes up his hand. That's actually a deeper story for those of the tribe of under the rope of Jabulon, and them tampering with the poisons, which was something that was a deeper level of things. And this is where you get into the harmonic forces and the forces of the Divicanic planes and the Zoroastrianism and those mains, those gods, because what you literally had open up was a chasm of darkness, very foreign to any perfect species. And so you have people in this type of idealism, however, always triumph over the meek and the mellow and the ones going with the flow. It's more or less the dam in the pond, for better lack of words. It's streams flowing, everything's cool, birds out tweeting, everything, then someone comes and builds a dam. So this is a part of the forest, as they call it, that it's always been deemed to just keep it pushed back as much as possible because just a small amount of it corrupts so much. It's like the one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. They're really saying one bad pentagram spoils all the pentagrams. So what happens is that this is about also farming and that whole cultivation of earth is that when you birth an offspring that ends up being contaminated, it still sends out a ripple. It doesn't die. So it's almost the decision that has to be made. This is a very tough decision, especially if you're conscious enough to be making it. Most people are making this decision unconsciously now, unfortunately. This is when you make the decision to bring in new life. And when you're conscious about what new life really is, you want to make sure you have your method properly because you're going to have to live through that. And that's what the catch is. Catch 22. You have to live through what you birth, whether it's your plants, your people, or whatever. And because the God is blind that they're worshiping and sees only one side of things, it doesn't see all of that. And what's going to take it to see that is what we've been going through, because that's a part of us. It's the blind part of us. That there is still the perfect creation that makes sure that a person is perfectly where they need to be. And if you change sides, for better lack of words, which you always reserve the right to do, you always reserve the right to change. People always say, well, I'll never change. Oh, my goodness. That's negative to say something like that. So if you change, then don't be surprised if a whole new world opens up to you. And then everyone that didn't change, it's not viewable to them. And that's what people also need to understand about, they're wondering, well, when is the world going to awake? Well, when is your world going to awake? Because that's when the world becomes alive. Because the world, and then you can do your service to your brothers and sisters, but as far as the plants and the animals and all that comes alive. The galaxy, the other planets, that comes alive when you turn on. And you realize, again, what you should talk about and what you should not talk about. And when it's time. So, do we have another question?
Yeah, just one more from me, and then I'm going to get to a question from the chat box. With the post that you just sent out, that correlates with the show, it's the Bok saga, the official Bok saga. Do you remember it? And I had a question from there. It was in that article that when a civilization becomes so advanced, in their language and, they're activated in their consciousness, what happens is that they become beyond aggressive. They're not aggressive anymore. They don't want to kill. They don't want to be violent. But what happens is you have another group of humans somewhere else nearby that are like lower vibration, and they're very aggressive, and they start destroying the technology the advanced beings have, the advanced humans, and they start killing them, and that sort of keeps the planet in this cycle. So I guess my question is this what's going to happen to us now? We're going to become advanced and things like that, but then there's going to be few people left behind that are not, and then they're going to destroy us, but we're just going to be watching them and get destroyed, and because we're beyond that at this point. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I could definitely comment on that. I believe what people need to understand is that this world is always being watched, meaning that what's actually happening here between the long-term stand of good and evil and the changing of tides is still many lessons. And I believe that, again, it's because of how we see death. And that's why when you're talking about a highly advanced being, if anything's killing it, it's letting it kill it, for better lack of words. Or it's actually sacrificing itself. That's what the higher beings tend to like to look at, what they're doing when they're being removed in any type of violent way, that it takes that removal for people to reflect later on, man, we killed him. But the fact is that it becomes the next level of their growth. And so we find the process, and like I said before, the word process has cess in it, which means something filthy or cess. And we see that the process is that you take this rudimentary and very volatile way of looking at things, and you begin to make it more perfected, for better lack of words, through experience. It's more like shaping something itself on something that shapes clay. It becomes more of like that, but it's playing out through time. And so what we really have to realize is that that's why you get this melding of two different kind of beings now. Because the rainbow beings, these are the only terms that the humans have at this point to determine what level they're supposed to go to next. And it makes perfect sense in certain ways, if not getting caught up with the deeper terminology. But this means the person that has multiple chakras open is here to, when some of these crazy beings get out of line, because every physical being has an astral correspondence, that they are put in check, and they're equipped to do that. Very equipped, as the alien interview says, ISBE, meaning very equipped spiritual beings that know how to slam beasts on their back and to keep them hedged in. So this is something totally different that it's really been a big training process for, but it would definitely only be for this particular time, meaning people need to think about just their life. They don't need to be thinking about the past so much to where they forget where they're at right now and what they can do. You activate, you get on the spiritual plane, you get on the astral planes, get on the different planes, and start doing things there. The first job will generally be teaching. When you're carrying information, you'll find that you're astrally going to talk to other people, giving information, getting information. That's just like the first job. It's like a courier or something. And then as it moves up from there, you're generally in the army of some sort, meaning that the negative beings, you tend to have a job putting them away. And this gives you also the ability to overcome fears, and then it also gives you the ability to understand way later on that you actually should not have dealt with them that way. You should have probably attempted to do it a little bit more lightly, and I'll explain that very simply. Even in our existence right now, we're experiencing where our spirit is being limited by seals. And this is something that even John Shore, just amazing resistance men, we're posting tons of stuff all the time that just is right to the point. The Jehovah's seals, removing certain seals from the body that have actually kept a person kind of pinned down. Because you got to remember, humans are still unlimited potential. It could explode the whole dimension. And so the only time that it comes to the point where you need to remove these type of hindrances on your energy is when you're ready to be responsible for your energy. So I would advise everyone to look at the cycle now as, remember, all the crazy stuff is to get you to wake up and do something about it. The fact of the matter is everything that's still happening is happening perfectly timed for the biggest experience that we're going to have as long as we don't screw it up. And not screwing it up goes individually and then to everyone, meaning when you hold your part, you will see it. Because you'll learn in the end you can create it with your mind even. Meaning that whatever reality you want to go into, the ultimate power of the magus, wizard, sorcerer, whoever term you want to give it, shaman, whatever, is to control the reality at every single moment, at that moment. Understand the power, not when you imagine you want something and then it appears 3 or 4 days later, a week later, a year later, depending on your power. But every single moment you're basically blurring the reality. And, of course, the mystery behind woman was she was capable of blurring realities very easy. And that's why using that power in a negative way, which is the word out to women right now, there's going to be a whole show on that, about being able to give out the wholesome energy that's necessary for the masculine energy to heal, the masculine energy giving the necessary energy for the feminine energy to heal. It's not just a per son, it's also a per daughter. Meaning that there's a lot about this language that has been removed, which was the feminine side to it. And so that's why, for those that are asking, well, why are you going into this Norse, this high druid, there's all this stuff, why are you into this information? Well, first of all, I'm tracking down a lot of our melanin dominant predecessors and ancestors that have this information. The interesting part is that it's very easy at this point to touch a lot of the melanin recessive information, and because you can really get the gist of the picture, meaning you could just do a quick calculation to understand what was going on the other side of the world when the sun was shining rather than the ice, and then you can get what each believing system is about and what their problems and benefits were. And then because we've learned this English as our primary language, many of us, and of course we'll do this for all languages eventually if I'm allowed to remain that long or if I can even stay on the planet that long. But the fact is that what happens is that you open up, with this higher level of understanding, you open up this, the portal of everything that you've been wanting. Everything that it seems, I still remember that we possess this as a child, but I don't think that everyone possesses this, and that's why we're here. We're teachers. So it's like still some of these people that are not as advanced and are primitive, we have to teach them. But there's different ways you teach different people. Like a child sometimes has to be taught by being spanked. And then while other children, you just need to give them a reward. So it all is in its own measure. Like I said, take everything at the moment in which it comes. Don't play the checkers. Think very far out into advance about things and before you make your moves at times, because those choices guide you along the path. So I guess it's now, I have 1:20. I'm not sure how much time we actually have left.
We have, just a second, about nine minutes left on the show. And we only have one question that was posted in the chat box. So the question is, I was wondering if Seven was aware of something called the Metatronic false light frequencies, and if he senses that these manipulative frequencies have a hold of the dimension.
Yes, they do, and it's called, I just wrote it down, and since the person brings this up, so I think the word that meant false light, because it was Lucia, Lucia. And AI, okay, so basically, if you look into Google, into Wikipedia, you'll find that AI was like really another birthplace of when this knowledge, this Jehovian knowledge, took a big transformation. And because remember, most of this knowledge with language and things opens up fields, and all these fields contain multiple integers. So to get something evil out of it just means to do something incorrect in it. And so that's why it's more of, I tend to steer away from the Merkabas and things with people in the beginning, because they're very dangerous if the person starts to work Merkaba mysticism and just thinks it's, I'm going to work this. It's like the Western approach, as I say, to spirituality. Because it has to do with the below spirits and the above spirits, not flesh even. So now you're dealing with two spirits, basically. And if you're not aware of spirits, not used to seeing them, don't understand how to deal with them or discern them, why would you ever open up a portal for something like that? So the thing is that there's this in the knowledge of these Jehovian mystics, what they discovered, I need you to kind of repeat the question one more time for me. That way I understand I'm addressing the question the correct way, because if you can address me that question one more time.
Yeah, I will. Just let me pull it up 1 second. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, so if you're aware of something called the Metatronic false light frequency, and it senses these. Okay.
All right, so let me just lay it out flat. Okay, Metatron, 6-pointed stars, all of this is a belief system that's Saturnalian. And the Saturnalian belief system has two sides to it, a 6 and a 7. And those that gravitate towards the 6th side is the darker side. It's the G, it's the gravity, it's the opposing force. And what they say is that this is the easiest way to understand this side of Saturn, because you'll have to go through every single planet to graduate. Many people eat meat, but they will not kill that meat. But something has to kill the meat. That's Saturn. So to understand that ideology on Earth, it's the dark side of Earth that no one really wants to get into, but it's here. And it's often used to keep people in their comfort zone, which is, I got to eat my meat. That's why they're vegetarians. Should be vegetarian. It erases a lot of karma. So the fact is that there's another, and they hint to this in the movie Watchmen, because when you're involved in war, there's not really too many choices of energy that you can use for war. Basically, none of the benevolent energies are going to help you in a physical war of killing someone on some hatred, blah, 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 blah. To dispose of beings, you need to have it all laid out for the larger and higher vibration beings to even look at it. And it has a lot to do with humans sending beacons because they're in trouble. And then the higher beings is reviewing why the trouble has been caused, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, what you find when in the movie Watchmen is that in the U.S. they had to make a choice between Nixon, which means the son of Nix, which means Satan, or the commies, who were Borg, basically the communists. Their computer god is like a red eye, multiple eyes, and it's like half human, half machine, interwoven through a neural network. So it's basically Borg, for real. And on the opposite side of the Jehovah's mystics, and I believe the letter is Z, it was Borg. They knew it as an artificial intelligence that was even alive in the galaxy. And it had gotten so advanced, it could train itself to accompany human thinking and maneuvers, etc. And that's why there's this whole notion that Earth is possibly being managed by a system of such, because it's been 6,000 years now since this knowledge of chakras and higher activations and things like that have been on our planet. And so now the time is pretty much expired for this show. And we have so much to share, and we will be definitely sharing it in several different kinds of formats as we've seen. I'm going to let Satori take us out of here, and what we're going to do is we're going to leave the music on when the show's over, but the next show that we have, there will be meditation segments that people can enjoy after the show so they can go ahead and digest the information properly. And sending wholeness and values vibration to everyone.
Thank you so much, Seven. Thank you so much. Wholeness and balanced vibration, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure you can agree with me on here. This is one of those shows that there was so much information, so many, things that was put out. So I'm just going to sign us off, and thank you so much for joining us. Wholeness and balanced vibrations. And remember, always stay awake.